Republican legislative leaders have now laid out their agenda for the 2016 session. They say they want to protect the First Amendment and also have rural health care issues on their to-do list. Plus, thinking about the unthinkable, should state lawmakers worry about terrorism in Georgia? What can and should be done about it? Lawmakers starts right now. Welcome to Lawmakers. We're at day 7 of the 2016 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Bill Nigut. Up first tonight, Capitol Report from GPB's Shelby Lynn. Shelby?
Hi, Bill. One of the bigger issues surfacing at the Capitol today was Republican Senator Greg Kirk's controversial legislation known as the First Amendment Defense Act. It's similar to two other measures, Senator Josh McCoon's Religious Liberty Bill and House Speaker David Ralston's Pastor Protection Act. Kirk held a press conference today to explain what his bill is all about and why it's needed. The America's Republican says he planned on filing the contentious First Amendment Defense Act of Georgia today and wanted to clarify the intent of the legislation before he did so.
The legislation does not challenge the same-sex marriage decision of the Supreme Court. It does not excuse a public official from doing his or her official duty with respect to marriages. But it does offer protection to private individuals and organizations who hold to the traditional view of marriage and that it should be between a man and a woman.
But businesses and gay groups and other opponents have called Kirk's bill everything from legalized discrimination and economically risky to divisive and reckless. Kirk disagreed with that characterization, contending the principle of his legislation is actually the same as the one at the heart of the same-sex marriage battle.
Again, let me say, live and let live is the motto of the First Amendment Defense Act of Georgia. Faith-based organizations that believe in the long-held definition of marriage should have the right to operate freely without fear of persecution. One group's access to a right does not diminish the rights of another.
Kirk said his bill will not allow a public employee, for example, to refuse to do his or her job, like issuing marriage certificates to gay couples.
The First Amendment Defense Act of Georgia in no way impedes, hinders, or otherwise interferes with same-sex couples' right to obtain a marriage license. It does not challenge the ruling of the Supreme Court that changed the definition of marriage. It simply protects the rights of those who continue to believe that marriage is to be between a man and a woman.
Kirk says he is still vetting the legislation and expects it to continue changing even after it's introduced. He also made a point to tell reporters he has gay friends and even talked with them about the bill.
I'm still the chief meteorologist.
A busy day at the state capitol for Governor Deal, whose staff is keeping an eye on the winter storm in North Georgia and the state of emergency in several counties.
We had already put in place an emergency declaration for some 15 counties. Based on the projections now with the forecast, we're adding 2 additional counties, Hall and Banks, to that list. We will extend that emergency declaration through Sunday.
The governor says they will continue to monitor the storm over the weekend. He also talked with reporters after an announcement about a new call center in Gwinnett County for Kaiser Permanente, which will add another 800 jobs to the area.
These are good, high-paying jobs, and it gives people the opportunity to have expendable income, contribute to the resources of the state of Georgia, also to add to the communities in which their families live. It's great for our state all the way around.
Finally tonight, the House Judiciary Committee heard a presentation today from the Georgia Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. The group has spent the last several months studying police shootings in Georgia. Project Director Rob Rhodes says one area they hope to get action on in this session is improving police training.
We believe that there is consensus among all the folks that we talk to, virtually all the folks that we talk to, including representatives from the law enforcement community, that it is time to take a careful look at the minimum training curriculum required for our law enforcement officers in Georgia. We believe that that view is shared by the leadership of the Police Officers Standards and Training Council, and we're happy to see in the budget that Governor Deal included some funds to support the hiring of a curriculum specialist.
Committee Chairman Wendell Willard says he's also interested in reviewing police training in Georgia, but the committee took no action today because it was an informal session. That's it from the Capitol tonight, Bill. Tomorrow, we'll take a closer look at casino gambling and the likelihood of whether expanded legalized gambling might become legal in Georgia. Back to you.
Thank you, Shelby. Joining us tonight in the studio for our wide-ranging conversation, we have Representative Stacey Evans. She is a Democrat from Smyrna. Greg Bluestein, always glad to have you back from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Senator Bill Cowsert, a Republican from out in Athens, and Senator Fran Millar, he's a Republican from Atlanta. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to start, Senator Cowsert, if I may, with you, because the Republicans have now rolled out the legislative agenda that you were going to pursue during this session. And what's interesting about it is that way up near the top of your list is dealing with anti-terrorism measures. What does that mean, Senator?
Bill, that's actually our top priority this year. I think everybody has a focused attention on that after some of these recent domestic terrorism incidents. And we want to find out what Georgia's doing to protect against it, to guard against it, to respond to any such attacks in the future. We want to make sure we're adequately funding our efforts, and we want to make it the best we can. It really is incumbent upon us to protect against this known threat.
So could we drill down on that just a little bit more? What does that mean? What are you looking at putting in place?
Well, we've been drilling. We've been looking to see exactly what we're doing, and there's been some comfort to learn that the GBI has a program now, and it's called GSAC, which is Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They analyze threats, they collect data, they collect information, coordinate with the federal agencies like the FBI, Homeland Security, coordinate with local law enforcement, state patrol, all of our different agencies in the state to coordinate efforts to protect us against any known terrorist attacks. And it's somewhat of a comfort to know that we have been working on that. But I think if you would talk to Vernon Keenan at the GBI, he would tell you we need more funding to have more analysts to be better prepared to both, analyze any potential threats, root them out, and then stop them before they occur.
Greg Bluestein, it's interesting because I see nods from both Fran Millar and Stacey Evans about this, but it's interesting. I mean, I think it's probably a comfort to the citizens of Georgia to know that the legislature is concerned about this, but I'm not sure that we necessarily think about anti-terrorism measures as being the state. We think the feds usually when we talk about this.
It's one of those things, though, both parties can reach common ground because who's going to vote against public safety? But exactly, this is a federal issue to many people, but there's so many issues areas where the state can intervene, power plants, government buildings, courthouse security, as we saw with the Brian Nichols tragedy. That wasn't terrorism, but you see where there's areas for security to improve.
Do you, Representative Evans, do you agree with what Greg's saying, that this is a bipartisan sort of agenda?
Absolutely it is. I mean, the number one role of government is to make sure that our citizens are safe. And while it's primarily a federal role to deal with Homeland Security, they're always going to be coordinating with our GBI, with our local law enforcement. And so we need to be ready and have our ducks in a row, so to speak, so that when the time comes and when we do need to coordinate, we're ready to go and we know what to do. It's not the first time we've dealt with it. Senator
Millar, I throw a hot potato in your direction. Because you can handle it. One of the things that we went through just a few weeks ago was concern over Syrian refugees coming into the state. The governor, of course, didn't want to allow them, temporarily at least. Sam Olin said, sorry, this is federal jurisdiction. As you think about terrorism and security here, does this issue continue to worry, do you think, Republicans and Democrats downtown?
I think so. I think you've got to, it's not just people planting a bomb. Georgia Power, Paul Bowers will give a speech where he'll tell you they get 1 million attempts a day to break into their system. 1 million a day at Georgia Power. Then you've got the water situation. So I think it's got to be a concerted effort. I think from our perspective, certainly in the Senate, we don't have a great understanding of this. Part of the issue, too, goes when you deal with the feds, you have to have certain levels of security. So we've got to make sure, maybe we'll have to do it legislatively, that we've got the right people that have have that level of security so that they can interact with the feds. Because right now, we just don't know enough, and that's why we're really looking into this. And I applaud Bill's the one that really brought this forward, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And as Stacey said, this is something that all of us are on board with. So
Well, if you don't mind, let me go back to the question about Syrian refugees and whether you are worried now that the Attorney General has suggested that the governor really doesn't have the authority to keep us from taking in more refugees.
I think we have to remember that the refugee program is a federal program. We don't control it. We don't have the information necessary about, we wake up one day and find out people are here. I think by and large in this country, we have been a compassionate people for the last 30 years at least. And the refugee program has done some good things. However, that being said, I don't believe, and I believe the FBI director said the same thing, that we can't let 10,000 people in at one time. Normally it's an 18 to 24-month vetting process. You can't do that en masse. So I would have some concern about the Syrian refugees for that reason, because of the number of people we're talking about. And so, I understand what the governor said, and I understand what Attorney General Olin said. And I would say, based upon my understanding, he probably is reading the law correctly. But nevertheless, it still should be a concern for people.
Greg, one of the other issues we're going to talk about here tonight and turn to now really is health care in Georgia. And the Republicans, big part of their agenda is rural health care, concerns about rural hospitals, that sort of thing. We go through this ongoing battle down there over whether expanding Medicaid would be a solution. It's certainly not one the Republicans have chosen.
No, and Governor Deal made that clear again last week that it would be too costly to expand Medicaid. But we're still seeing rural hospitals close. There was a string of them that have closed. Most recently, in David Ralston's home district up in North Georgia, a rural hospital just announced it was going to be closing. So that still continues to be an issue that Republicans and Democrats are grappling with, and it's part of the Senate's Republican caucus's agenda as well.
Well, and that's what I want to get to, Senator. What do you want to do in terms of rural health care?
We want to make sure that all Georgians have access to adequate health care. And some of these areas of the state, we don't have the infrastructure. It's harder to provide those services. We need good EMS services to get folks to emergency treatment when they need it. We have to have a workforce development program to have enough doctors to serve these areas. We're exploring telemedicine to be able to use the technology that we have today to make healthcare resources available to people in more remote areas. And we need coordination to weave this together to make certain that we are taking care of the health of our society. It's funny that these are Republican core issues. Public safety, our first one we talked about, health care, and the next one I'm sure on your list is the same as ours, is moving into education. Those are government functions that I think both parties agree are mandatory, and we have ideas on all of them.
Representative Evans, do you think that health care is a major concern of Republicans? Do you think because of the refusal to consider expansion of Medicaid, they may be not doing for the people of Georgia what we could be doing?
I think it should be a major concern, and I think it is. I think that there's just a little bit of angst about how to do it. And it's unfortunate because if we did expand Medicaid, a lot of these problems that Republicans are trying to figure out alternative solutions to deal with would be dealt with in one fell swoop. We would have this year, we would have 100% of the Medicaid expansion paid for by the federal government. Next year, it would go down, I think, to 96 or 94, but still a very significant amount of money coming in here from the feds. And the job growth that it would bring makes the Kia plant look like a speck. It would be a multiple of that. And so it's really a no-brainer.
The key concern that Governor Deal has brought up over and over again is that down the road, the state would assume the cost. That right now the feds pick up most of the costs, but down the road, the state will have to absorb significant costs.
Let me tell you one thing we did last year that people forget about. It's not just expanding the number of people that are eligible for Medicaid. It's expanding the number of doctors and healthcare professionals that will give services to Medicaid patients. One of the most important things we did last year was increase the reimbursement rate. Primary care doctors, pediatricians, OBGYNs, so that more of those physicians will agree to accept Medicaid patients. And I think if you ask the medical community, they will tell you that we did expand access to medical care last year to the most needy people by encouraging more doctors to stay in the program, to continue offering services to poor and disabled patients.
Bill, there's an issue here that people lose sight of when we live in the metro area. where we've got access to all these various doctors, all these specialists, et cetera. I can show you a map that shows you in certain counties the only people that are in the medical field are marriage and family therapists. We have a real problem with the number of providers. We have a problem with nurses throughout this entire state. So what Bill is saying to you is very, very true, that we don't have sufficient access in many portions of this state. Now, we've done some things. We've consolidated some hospitals, which makes sense. Some of these regional hospitals we put together, like down there in Statesboro and down in that area. But access is a big problem. And again, I believe we will expand Medicaid. I don't know when. I think we will do it. I think we're watching some of the other states. It's being looked at. There's plans that are out there, whether it's Arkansas, whether it's North Carolina, whether it's these particular states. But again, we want to do it so we have more control of it. There's a reason all these states are applying for various waivers. They want controls too. So I think it's inevitable, be honest with you. But again, I can't tell you when.
That's an interesting comment by Senator Millar.
Senator Millar is saying publicly what a lot of Republicans have been saying privately for a long time, which is it's inevitable. You're seeing Alabama, you're seeing other governors in red states openly saying they're reviewing, re-looking at, taking another look at expanding Medicaid. And there's conservatives here in Georgia who think there's sort of a middle ground. There's a way to start getting there this year or next year and smoothing the way for Governor Deal to do it by the end of his tenure.
Interesting to hear this tonight, Representative Evans.
And I just say, please let it be sooner rather than later, because the longer we go giving up these years where we get 100% paid, the less time we have to reap some benefits when we're not footing any bill to realize savings that could be used to fund that gap between what the feds pay and don't pay later. If we don't do it soon, we're going to lose those free years.
All right, I want to talk. I know we're going to have to take a break in a minute. And one of the things we're going to want to talk about tonight is just hear what your thoughts are on First Amendment issues, some of the issues that are down there that are floating around. Sure. But before we take this break, tell us about your ABLE Act. What do you want to do?
Well, first of all, the ABLE Act, Achieving a Better Life Experience, deals with providing basically savings plans for people with disabilities. Young people up to the age of 26, as long as a disability is diagnosed before that time. It's been done in a number of states. The feds got this one right. They passed enabling legislation, huge bipartisan basis back at the end of 2014. And it allows these people to set up accounts and not lose their Medicaid benefits, where people can contribute up to $14,000 in a year. They can build accounts up to $235,000. The bottom line is this. As people get older, they're 65, they're 70, my peer group.
You and me both, Senator.
They are worried about their 40-year-old child, what's going to happen when they're gone. This isn't a panacea, but it's an attempt, because before this legislation, they could only set aside a couple $1,000s a year. So again, as I said to somebody today, Dick Yarborough, a friend of yours, I said, Dick, if we don't do it for the least of these, what the heck are we doing down here?
So you're going to get this accomplished this session?
We feel very positive about that, and we're so thankful to Senator Millar to carry that on the Senate side.
And it'll start in the House because it deals with taxes.
Right.
And what it basically means is you contribute monies and then the earnings are tax-free, just like a 529 savings plan for colleges. And we know of no opposition. It maybe costs the state $10 million out of a $24 billion budget. We think it's a pretty good investment if we can't help these people, like I said.
Okay, look, we're going to have to take a break and reset for a minute. But coming up on Lawmakers, we're going to look at rethinking the Hope Grant. Should it cover full college tuition? Should it, in fact, do more for technical schools? We'll put that topic on the table and much more. As we go to a break, how well do you think you know your lawmakers? Representative Jason Spencer is a Republican representing House District 180 in Camden County. He's a physician's assistant. Spencer was sworn in as a member of the General Assembly in 2011. He says that not many of his fellow lawmakers realize that he has an identical twin, Jeremy, who works with the Department of Education. Jeremy's at the Capitol quite a bit, and the two of them often cause confusion for many members of the legislature. Back with more Lawmakers in a moment.
A lot can happen in a day, and most of it can't be summed up in a headline or subject line or 140 characters. So when you're ready to know more than just what's happening outside your window, around the country, and across the globe, we'll bring you the voices who can tell you why.
This is All Things Considered.
Listen every afternoon.
From 4 to 7 on GPB Radio. Join an all-star musical salute to Billy Joel, the 2014 recipient of the Library of Congress Gershwin Prize for Popular Song, with performances by Billy Joel, John Mellencamp, Leanne Rimes, Boyz II Men, Gavin DeGraw, Josh Groban, Natalie Mays, Michael Feinstein, Twyla Tharp Dance with Kevin Spacey and Tony Bennett.
Friday at 9 on GPB.
Did you know that Georgia state minimum wage is $5.15 an hour? But Georgians covered under the federal Fair Labor Standards Act get a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. Although some states, including Alabama and South Carolina, have no state minimum wage, Georgia remains on the low end of the spectrum for those that do. Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. I'm here tonight with Representative Stacey Evans, with Greg Bluestein, political writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Senator Bill Cowsert from Athens, and Senator Fran Millar from Atlanta. We're going to spend the time we have left talking a little bit about education. First, Representative Evans, you have a proposal that would expand Hope scholarships and make them more readily available, I think I've got this right, for technical education, right?
Correct. There are two parts to Hope. There's the Hope Scholarship that goes to students who attend our traditional four-year schools like UGA and Georgia Tech, but there's also the Hope Grant, and that goes to students who attend our technical colleges. My bill deals only with the grant, and it would tie the grant award to the tuition amount at technical colleges as opposed to what it pays right now, which is a percentage of tuition. The scholarship, it would continue to cover a percentage, and while it would be nice to wave the wand and have every scholarship and every grant cover full tuition, it's not financially feasible to do that right now, but it is for the grant because the grant is a lot cheaper than the scholarship.
So what you're essentially saying, I think, is trying to make technical college more affordable for more people who want that as an alternative to college.
Absolutely, and it's so important because the technical college student population is the most price sensitive in higher education. The average face of a technical college student is a 26-year-old white female from a household income of less than $40,000. So that gap between what the grant covers now and what it doesn't, it may only be about $400 or $500, but to those students, that's the difference between being able to go and not being able to go. And we can afford to bridge that gap for them. There is money available in the lottery to pay for this, and it would be an amazing investment for our state. Everyone knows we've got this skills gap. We've got people that are looking for jobs. We've got jobs that are unfilled, and a lot of those jobs that are unfilled are jobs that you get trained for in technical college.
So just to be sure, at a time when people are worried about whether the Hope Scholarship can remain fully funded, this is not going to cut into the funding for the Hope Scholarship in any way. Is that your understanding of it?
That's my understanding of it, but at the same time, there's a lot of debate going on about legalizing casino gambling and finding and horse racing and finding other ways to raise that revenue so that you can fund more programs.
Bill, can I raise an issue on this?
Sure.
We need to have about 200,000 people with certificates or associate degrees or bachelor degrees when we get to 2020. The chancellor said yesterday in his remarks at his budget hearing, we might have 80,000 graduates from the four-year system at that point. We've got to come up with these graduates. We've made a real push over the last 6 or 7 years to go from just college to career ready, being not just everybody needs to go to a four-year college. Stacey is right. We need to get more people involved in technical education. I mean, that's the biggest complaint we hear from employers, that we're not giving them qualified people when they come out. So we've got to find a way to do it. We may have to do some things that are income sensitive as well. And I've talked to this with the chancellor. I've talked about this with Stacey, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to try to look for ways to broaden the base, if you will. But this technical college is so critical. And you ask why all these companies are coming to Georgia, like over where Bill is, the large pharmaceutical company that just came over there, Baxter, because we've got technical skills and training between that and Quick Start, and that's why we're being so successful and why Site Selection continues to name us the #1 place to go do business.
So am I hearing you've got some bipartisan support going on this?
I think so. Well, I know so. The bill itself has 3 Republican signers and 3 Democratic signers. It's a bipartisan issue. It's just about growing our workforce.
Okay. Well, we'll watch it develop. Senator Cowsert, talking about education, there's a lot of concern about how much testing we do in Georgia, and you, as part of the legislative agenda for the Republicans, want to do something about that.
Well, that was our third item on our priority list for the year, was to reduce this repetitive, unnecessary testing on students. We're hearing from teachers, from parents, from students, that they are spending more time on testing than ever was done in the past, rather than classroom teaching. And we're going to try to respond to those concerns and reduce that testing load on the teachers and the students. Some amount is necessary. You have to gauge their mastery of the subject matter, those type of things, but we don't want to do any more testing. We want to reduce that load of testing on the schools and let our students learn. Let them be taught by the teachers.
We've got the opportunity to do it because when they reauthorize No Child Left Behind, it's gone back to the states now to set up the accountability measures, which was not there before. So this is an opportunity for us to do this. And Bill's absolutely right. And again, I think Stacey will agree, this is another bipartisan issue. You know, we actually do some things together here in Georgia as Republicans and Democrats. And this is a good example of where we're on the same page.
What does that mean, though? I mean, do you have a proposal that
Richard Woods, okay, the superintendent of education. They're evaluating the tests now. They will probably come to us with a recommendation.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think from his department, and then of course then the House and the Senate will help deal with it. But again, there's a big awareness by everybody, whether it's parents, teachers, etc. We've gone too far.
So again, this is a kumbaya night because Democrats certainly could join in this effort to reduce testing.
Absolutely. I think everyone agrees that we're overburdening our students and our teachers with all these tests. And when it comes to tests, I think the theme is it's quality, it's not quantity. And we really need to keep that in mind. But I mean, we've got an agreement now on we're going to expand the Hope Grant. We're going to expand Medicaid. We're going to lower testing.
Someday.
Yeah. But this is a lot. We're making progress.
Well, that probably ought to make a point. Expansion of Medicaid is not part of the
Go ahead. You want to jump in real quick?
But there is kind of an opening here for Republicans and Democrats on this testing issue. I mean, Governor Deal tapped the brakes on a broader education overhaul. It left a vacuum of sorts on education. And you heard him also criticize the overtesting as well. So Senate Republicans kind of have a chance with this.
All right. Well, I'm glad we've resolved all of these issues tonight. As far as I'm concerned, we can move the clock ahead, make this day 35, and get out of here a lot sooner than we all expected to. I really want to thank you all very much for being here. Stacey Evans, Bill Cowsert, Fran Millar, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Greg Bluestein, thank you for being here as well. So that does it for day 7 of the 2016 session. 33 legislative days to go. Be sure to tune in tomorrow night at 7 for Shelby Lynn's Capitol Report. As always, you can track us on Facebook and Twitter at GPB News, or check out our website, gpb.org/lawmakers. You can find full episodes of our show and lots of additional information there. And be sure to tune in to GPB Radio for Political Rewind. We're now on the air live twice a week, Wednesday at 2 and Fridays at 3. Best political roundtable show in town. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here again for another edition of Lawmakers.